I thank the witnesses for their testimony, and I will now recognize members for 5 minutes each for questions. Ms. Hageman, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Henry, thank you so much for your willingness to testify in support of this important legislation. My staff and I have deeply appreciated the opportunity to work with you on this issue, so thank you for all the good work that you've done for the folks in Wyoming. We both touched on this a little bit already, but I want to start by asking you about the cost burden on customers. WAPA has estimated the cost for this year's delivery to be $20 million more than it would have been without the bypass requirements. What if the basin fund were to be depleted? What is the worst case scenario for our ratepayers?
Well, assuming that the cost of the replacement power in total over the 4 years is $220 million, and assuming that WAPA were going to recover all of these costs and rates, WMPA's share would be about $900,000. We're a not-for-profit. That means that we have to pass those costs on to our municipalities. And as you know, the municipalities in the state of Wyoming are required by law to recover all the costs associated with its electric service. That would mean the 25,000 people that we serve and businesses of those municipalities would pay that cost. WMPA doesn't believe that it's fair to burden the ratepayers with non-power costs, especially of this magnitude.
You noted in your testimony that H.R. 9969 would help CRISP customers to collaborate with the federal agency. Could you elaborate on what this legislation would do for hydropower stakeholders?
Absolutely. The bill language specifically would require the agencies to create a plan to address both the challenges of the diminished hydropower production and the drawdown of the basin fund and the impacts on routine operations and maintenance and capital replacements. It also requires agencies to address grid reliability.
And can you talk a little bit about the uncertainty that this creates for customers when their access to reliable power is cut off during peak electricity demand?
Absolutely. The peak demand for electricity usually coincides with the hottest and coldest extreme weather. Customer usage cannot exceed the quantity of generation available. That's physics. When there is not enough generation available, rolling blackouts are required. And in terms of uncertainty, I think the initial uncertainty is how uncomfortable their homes begin and whether or not their food will remain at safe temperatures. However, there are some services that people may not attribute to water, such as, or to electricity, such as pumping the water and managing, say, the waste products that people produce, as well as traffic lights, those kind of municipal services that we think of.
Some our biggest demands for electricity are actually hospitals, schools, and our industry. And another question that I have for you is, did the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, in coming up with this plan, did they actually do any kind of an analysis as to the environmental poverty that they were going to be creating as a result of bypassing these flows?
I think that they took a look at some of the grid reliability pieces that were out there, but in my opinion, I think the timing was maybe not well understood. It takes roughly an hour to swap between bypass and generation, and from an electrical grid perspective, what happens is we really have to respond instantaneously. And so in that situation, you can't just change your mind. And what happens if once load has come offline, it actually increases when you pick it back up. When it's really hot out, homes get hotter. So the truth is you can only pick up a few of them, and then by the time you can pick up the next one, you can't pick up all of them. That's actually what happened in Winter Storm. One of the things that happened in Winter Storm Uri is they thought they'd be able to roll it through and bring it on faster, but then when they picked someone up, it would actually take more power than they anticipated to pick it back up, and certainly it had very tragic results.
So the law of unintended consequences continues to rear its ugly head, I guess you would say.
Yes, ma'am.
Historically, why is the power generated at Glen Canyon Dam so essential?
So there are a number of reasons that it's essential, but one of it is that's about 70% of the CRISP power comes from the Glen Canyon Dam, so it's the largest of the resources. It also is, so hydropower is incredibly dispatchable. It's not frequency sensitive like other resources, because the shaft size physically is so large in those hydropower generators. This makes it incredibly valuable for immediately responding to changes in load.
Well, again, Ms. Henry, I really want to thank you for your knowledge, your work on this issue. It's very important to Wyoming, but it's also important to the larger discussion that we're having. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.